My name is Iuliana Marcinschi. I represent the Human Rights Information Center. My journey as an activist started at a public event of Amnesty International in Moldova. It was dedicated to stop violence against women. And thanks to the talks that we had during the event and afterwards, I learned from the activists that human rights are not somewhere over there. They're everywhere. They belong to each one of us, to myself, to my mother, to our communities, to whoever. As a post-Soviet country, Moldova has an heritage of suppression of freedom of speech. That's why people would not complain, and if asked about their problems, they would say everything's fine. It's considered shameful to actually talk about your problems. And that's why 5 of us, human rights activists, decided in 2010 to register a Human Rights Information Center. Initially, it was dedicated extensively to human rights education work. So for the 3rd year in a row, we have a Human Rights Academy. It is for public officials, for activists, for teachers, for students, for whoever thinks this would be helpful in their work or life. We also do a lot of monitoring activity because we want to learn from the first source what is the real problem, what is the identity of people, what they think would be a best solution for their problem. So that is why we monitored freedom of religion in the Republic of Moldova in 2012. It ended with a report about 23 different communities throughout Moldova. And the results that we found were quite alarming because in some communities, religious denomination experienced discrimination from the local authorities, discrimination from other religious denomination, even discrimination from the police who was supposed to protect them. In some areas, actually, the parishioners experienced damage of their property, intimidation, and even in one place, the car of the priest was shot. He found it in the morning with bullets. The thing is that many religious denominations, they think that to forget is their culture, so most of them would just not address this problem. We also work on monitoring gender equality because in Moldova, less than 20% of members of the parliament are women, and from the cabinet of ministers, just less than half. Considering that women in society are 53%, this is quite underrepresentative. We also work on access to education of vulnerable groups because children from vulnerable families would often just not be enrolled into schools, or there will be a high rate of dropout just because of the high unofficial taxes from schools and the high cost of actually equipping children to go to school. Also, we work on the cultural rights of ethnic minorities, which are usually quite isolated because the Ministry of Culture thinks that each community, besides the mainstream one, should just organize events on their own using their own funds. And the most disturbing thing is that this information would not just go mainstream. It would be just a closed event, and people would just not learn about the diversity of cultures in Moldova. Just because discrimination is still a big issue in Moldova, the hate crimes started to be on the rise. In my other work with American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative, we have a program to capacitate the LGBT organizations and to tackle hate crimes by conducting trainings with police officers, with prosecutors, with judges, to identify the institutional, the legislative gaps that impede investigation and sanctioning of hate crimes. So far, we have created a working group at the Ministry of Justice and have conducted a comprehensive study to see where the gaps are. And the year 2015 will be dedicated especially to proposing amendments to the Parliament on tackling hate crimes.